Kick-hank. I did it again. All right. Well, hello. Well, hello.
Hello.
Well, well, hello there. I didn't see you there. Guys, welcome back to Pencil, not pencil, I pencil, pencil, T-O pencil, not even pencil, T-O-O pencil, pencil to pencil, your favorite weekly repeating log running occasional live stream where you get to talk.
Endless pencil.
It's a log pencil, infinite pencil, where you get to hang out with three expert cartoonists and talk shop, ask questions, and also be at the front line of a lot of really fantastic interviews and conversations. Well, hello, my name is Jamar Nicholas. I'm your first host. I am an author, illustrator in the traditional book space, but in the rest of the world, they call me a cartoonist. I have a book series that Steve Conley was nice enough to hold up. My first origin issue is Leon the Extraordinary over at Scholastic underneath the graphics imprint. The next book in the series, Leon Worst Friends Forever, drops October 1st. We're so close. Pre-order it, why don't you? I would be in remission if I did not introduce our co-host. he doesn't like talking about belts because he doesn't need titles at this point. When you're that elevated, you don't need to wear the gold belt for people to know who you are. Ladies and gentlemen, your friend of mine, Stone Cold Steve Conley.
Hello guys. Hello. So good to see you. No, they've retired my number. It's hanging not in the rafters, but in like the shed behind the rafters.
In the boiler room, that's where it is.
But I'm your number 3 host. Possibly number 4, 3 with an asterisk. My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can read at Webtoons, Tapas, Go Comics, and middleagecomic.com. I write and draw that fantasy adventure story. I also make TTRPG books. So if you play the Dungeons and the Dragons, you can get your hands on some of my games and have fun rolling dice. You know, like a cool kid. But I would be remiss, possibly in remission, if I'd introduce the Tower Power, the Man of the Hour, too sweet to be sour, the Kirby Crackle to our click and clack, Mr. Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Manley. I am over 40. I've passed my 40th anniversary.
This
is my 40th anniversary, I think, was July. So now I'm moved past my 40th anniversary of working as a professional cartoonist.
Wow, Mike Manley.
Of poor standing.
What is the 40th anniversary symbol? That's not diamond. It's like, is it fiber?
I think it's
fiber.
I think it's Zipatone.
Wicker. My Wicker Award.
Wicker, the Wicker Man.
And I know I always joke about drawing people's childhoods, but I posted this week on my Facebook some coloring books that I did in the 80s. In one of my friends on Facebook, one of the people on there said, I had that coloring book. My grandma bought it for me or something like that. So it's like sort of weird. Andre, I think you know the guy. Jamar, you and I had dinner with him once.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's sort of weird to think of a guy like, well, yeah, I mean, he's not like a kid, but it's like he had a coloring book. Comic books sort of make sense that people would remember comic books, I guess, more than coloring books, but everybody had coloring books. I still remember coloring books I had. Like,
sure.
I think the one that stands out the most was a Frankenstein Jr. coloring book, because I loved Frankenstein Jr. I was like 4, 5, maybe.
Because you're from that generation where the Universal Monsters was it. That was like LeBron James of stuff. Like,
I guess so. I mean, I would say, even though I did like Frankenstein,
mhm.
I was never really that into Dracula, and the Wolfman always kind of was sus. I did like Frankenstein.
That was your dude, right?
Well, yeah, because I think of all the monsters, he was like the best, right? Like I know people feel like the Creature from the Black Lagoon was cool and everything, but there was only like one. It's like there was many Frankenstein. Only Karloff only did the two, but Frankenstein loomed as large. That version of Frankenstein still loomed, I think, larger in my childhood. And then I would say bigger was probably Godzilla.
Oh yeah, Godzilla was a he was.
When my dad took me to see Destroy All Monsters.
Good one.
Right. At the Fox Theater in Detroit, which was like one of those grand old theaters. It's still there, I think. But, you were impressed not only by just, wow, you're going to go see Godzilla, but then you go in one of those old theaters and it was just like, wow, you'd never seen anything like that. So yeah. So Godzilla was probably bigger than Frankenstein because I had seen whatever they would show on Sir Graves Ghastly, who was the horror host. I don't know.
Like Svengoolie and those other.
Right, yeah.
Guys, yeah.
He was like decades before Svengoolie. So yeah, I was really into Frankenstein. I like Frankenstein. So what could be better is if you combine Frankenstein with a robot, right?
Frankenstein Jr., that was a Saturday morning cartoon?
Hanna-Barbera, yeah.
That's awesome.
No, I watched them. Well, I watched one. I showed a friend of mine one a couple of years ago. They're just awful. They're just terrible. They're. I mean, the voice acting is great and the music is great, and if you close your eyes, right, it's like an old radio show, right? The voices and everything, and then when you watch the cartoon, they were produced. The stories made really no sense. They were so poorly written. So if you go on I'm sure you could probably find some on YouTube. But you watch them as an adult, you go like, wow. And I feel the same now about almost all of them except Johnny Quest probably had the best stories. But even Space Ghost. And I loved Space Ghost as a kid. It's the same thing. When you watch them, like the stories were terrible. They were just, it's like, he fights a Viking. Okay. Why would a guy from space goes back in time to fight a Viking? But it's like, it's so poorly thought out, because they were trying to produce all those cartoons and they didn't have the budget. So, Johnny Quest probably had the biggest budget of them all because it was prime time. Like the Flintstones.
Right.
You watch the Flintstones, they still hold up because they had good writing, great voice cast, great cast. Like the Simpsons, and the writing was good, even though, the first couple seasons, the animation was still pretty decent because they had all the old timers. But anyway, that was just funny that I posted these coloring books and somebody said, "Oh, I had that coloring book," because I'm used to people saying I have that comic,
right?
But I have never had anybody go, "Oh, I had that coloring book."
When
colored Slimer's face all black in a big circle like little kids do when they get a coloring book.
When Mike posts stuff like that, people would do the DiCaprio meme where they're like,
right.
I mean, it is cool that you can kind of unearth a memory you maybe, and this happens a lot, something you had not thought about in decades. That just kind of like the dopamine spike hits you.
Well, I think one of the things I try to show, I mean, my Facebook feed is just nothing but me showing art, my art and other people's art that I like. But also, I think to show that cartooning is, and that skill set is really broadly applicable to a lot more stuff than just drawing, Batman, right? And when I started out in comics, you got a comic job and then you were hunting. So the girlfriend I had at the time was doing kids' books for Golden Book. And I remember I took the job up to New York after working on it with her. 3 days with no sleep. I went to the art director's house in New York, completely
You're done. You're done. Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
But the art director was so impressed that I hand delivered it to their house. Well, it was actually to her agent's house, but the agent was married to the art director, I believe, at Golden Book. And she gave me the contact for a lady in Racine, Wisconsin, where they did all the Whitman, where they did all the activity books and puzzle books and all that stuff. And I sent my stuff to them. And then I was like off running. I did all kinds. I mean, I was drawing Conan, but doing Muppet Babies. I was doing very different jobs in the beginning of my career because you want to eat. So maybe you don't really like Muppet Babies, or you don't like Pretenders, or all kinds of weird things, like all the
Visionaries, whatever.
All that stuff that was coming. Every show that came out seemed to also then have coloring books and sticker books. And stickers are actually, I think, were still, I don't know now, but until fairly recently, stickers were still pretty big with kids.
Well, I was at the dollar store because I like to go hunting through the dollar store once in a while. And I did this on coffee break. They're still making color forms.
Really?
I got 2 color form sets. I got a modern Avengers one and a Spider-Man one with like a lot of the spider.
You'll be the one escaping.
Where is the laser? Ask the police. You caught me. You triggered me with that. And this is the funniest thing. And if no one's ever seen color forms, I hope you do, because we're all gray beards. So there's like the plastic base with the cityscape or something, and then you peel off the dudes, and you can put them all on the playset. The funniest thing about all this stuff, Mike and Steve, is that there were no villains. They were all just kind of like Hulk jumping or Cap going like this, or like, but they're not fighting anybody.
Right.
Like
meaningless pose.
Yeah, I had those when I was a kid for sure. I'm certain there was a Green Goblin or a Doc Ock or something in that mix, so you could create the scene with the heroes fighting the villains.
I remember. I actually remember how those things smelled, because they had a really weird,
like vinyl-y
smell, and some of the other toys I had as a kid also had that smell. Like I remember there was a Batcave playset based upon the 66 Batman. And I remember, got it for Christmas or birthday or something. My brother Dave and I are playing with it, and I'm like, this smells like the color form. It's like it had the same smell, and when you think about it, the guy who came up with the idea that we're going to make a coated plastic with these vinyl stickers that will stick to it, and the child will use their imagination, and it's like, wow, That's one step above making shadow puppets around the fire in the cave.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's still coming from an era where kids use their imagination. It was cool.
Ew.
I looked into getting those made a while back. All the merch stuff is an indie cartoonist and creator. Like, how do you make? Because there was a comic book. There was a DC comic that they released, Superman, and it was in a bag, and it had a few color forms in there. Or vinyl clings is the generic.
Is that what it's called in the trade?
A vinyl cling. Yeah.
Is that what the guy goes around with his suitcase? Hi, I'm Ray Parker. I work for Vinyl Cling Incorporated. He opens up his suitcase.
They're all on the inside of the case.
All right, yeah. Here's our
Inside his coat.
Yeah, here's our attaché of adult clings.
Oh. Well, also since we're remembering, and I went down this rabbit hole. I don't know if you remember Presto Magic. And Presto Magics were another playset things, but it was all paper. So it kind of came in a little kind of like pocket. And so they all had different themes, like say the Battle of Midway. There were a lot of World War II ones. And you open this little like cardstock paper playset, and it might be like, the USS Pennsylvania or something. And then you had rub-off transfers that you would burnish onto the playset. And it was all like,
Oh, yes.
He did it. I gave him the dopamine spike.
Yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
And there were explosions and planes, and there was dog fighting. That's a straight up afternoon.
But after you rubbed it off, that was it, right?
That's it.
Single use color forms. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was totally remember that. It was just burnishing. It's like, because when we got back to doing, when you finally do transfer lettering, when you ask your grandparents, when you do transfer lettering, you got to burnish those in. Yeah.
And and I love those things, and they were almost like shut up and be quiet toys. Mm-hmm. Because I'm just going to be
Mom's got to go to the doctor's office. You sit over there in the corner, honey, and burnish.
Go burnish, baby. I'm gonna be back in 45 minutes. All right, Mama.
We'll get another burnish at the dollar store when you're done.
Go burnish, baby. All right, well, let's get this show started because we've been looking at this crawl for a minute. So, guys, I want to first.
People probably thought we've lost our mind.
Yeah. So, guys, first I want to start off by saying thank you for joining us live as always. We had advertised earlier in the week that Robert Alvarez was going to be here tonight, but Robert fell sick. And we are going to reschedule with Robert. But as we say in the business, the show must go on. So tonight we are here with you live, and we're doing something a little different. Now, what I love about doing these live streams is that the chat is always lively, and there's always nice banter, quipping about. But I wanted to turn the focus on you, dear viewer. You have the chance to ask your three expert hosts a question. I would assume it will be related to the cartooning business or comics or illustration or animation. Kind of like, I think, and this is weird, and don't take this the wrong way, I kind of think people are used to seeing us. I think people are used to seeing us, and they're like, oh, right, Jamar's a cartoonist. Let me ask him a question. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So, this is the time to cook up some questions for us, and we're going to spend our time together discussing questions and answering them. Steve, do you have anything to add to that, Steve? Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's great. I love it. We'll often get questions that are peppered in throughout our conversations with our guests. So they'll want to throw a question to Mike or me or Jamar, and we don't really want to derail the conversation with our guests. Our time with them is precious, and so they end up just getting lost. And so I think every once in a while, if we can have an episode like this where we can play catch up, that would be great. Also we need to do a better job of stockpiling those questions for times like this. But we're excited to hear your questions.
Yeah. So and also, I always think about this. It's kind of like, especially when all of us on this live stream have been friends for a really long time. And I know at the beginning of all of our friendships, you're kind of, even though you're now kind of being part of this new relationship with people, you're always curious about stuff like, Mike, tell us about the bullpen. What did Jim Shooter really push his sleeves up on his jacket? Did that really happen? And then you kind of get past that point where you're just now just being pals with people. But those questions still live out there. So, just because you're used to seeing us, don't forget that we're fonts of knowledge. So I want to start off with somebody. I don't see Paul Pate. What's up, Paul Pate? I don't see Paul Pate in the chat, but Paul Pate kind of showed up a little earlier in my posting for the show and put a question up. So we'll start there. And guys, keep your questions coming. We're going to try to do as much as we can tonight.
Keep those cards and letters coming.
Send your pictures to dear old Captain Noah. Oh, that's very Philadelphia. That was our Captain Kangaroo. Yeah. Captain Noah was like an old dude with white hair and a little like mariner's cap on a boat with his wife who was just going like this.
His wife was paddling away. I'm paddling home to mother.
Send your questions to Captain Noah. All right, guys. So first thing up, we have Paul Pate. What up, Paul Pate? Paul Pate says, and there's two questions. My 13-year-old daughter is obsessed with webtoons, but will not read comic books. Make it make sense, Steve Conley. And also, I'll read the second one just so we have it in the chamber. Also, my wife, who knows zero about comics and cartoons, tells my daughter that most cartoonists are boys. Ew, boys. Then she turns to me and asks, "Why, Papa?" Oh, I'm sorry, that's your wife. I'm sorry. Why, Paul Pate? Why?
Well, I mean, maybe Mama goes Papa. They're like old country people.
I know, Mom, Pa. So, Steve, I guess we'll start off with the first one. It seems like it's directed
Why,
at you.
Papa Steve? Answer us.
Well, I think the first part, why someone would be obsessed with webtoons but won't read comic books. The format for webtoons and the content of webtoons is just very different than what you get in comic books. I think if someone want to have their daughter read comic books, and I know that includes graphic novels, you could try collections of the webtoon strips, such as Nothing Special. Why am I drawing a terrible blank right now? Nothing Special. Lore Olympus.
Lore Olympus, yeah.
Those that have been collected into trades, and there's a bunch of Rocket Ship. As also, they do regular Kickstarters collecting webtoons. So if they really like, Katie Cook is the author of Nothing Special, and it's brilliant. I do think from what I understand, it was designed to be read in the mobile device, and that's a very different experience. You don't get things like panoramas, you don't get things like wide shots. Everything's very vertical and in your phone. But the stories have a much more, I would say, probably a younger creator base than comic books do. Comic books are very much beholden to Marvel and DC. They're universes that were started, 50 years before your daughter was born. And they're trying to keep that continuity going, even if it's multiversal. It's a whole thing. Whereas someone can pick up a story from webtoons and they. Tom Zoller. I did the Rocket Ship catch-all, but Tom Zoller has collected a number of books, including Cupid's Arrows and
Warning Label.
I went to Love and Capes. I'm like, that wasn't a webcomic. No, it kind of was, but it wasn't a webtoon. Not yet, anyway. But a lot of those strips just they're self-contained in a way that most comic books aren't. It's interesting that the audience for that feels more like what you'd get with Archie comics. It feels like it's this separate thing apart from the comic book world. And the stories are often about relationships in fantastical worlds, even if it's kind of, fantastic realism. I don't know why. I am always presuming it's the content. It's not the format that they have a problem with. I know people who don't like to read books until they find the book they like to read. So I tend to think people don't have a problem with a format. They have problems with the content. And Webtoons has just got like a fire hose of free content. So they'll find something they like on Webtoons, whereas you go to a comic book store, there's only X amount of physical space where you can see what's available. You might not find Leon there. You might not find Love and Capes there, because it's just in a sea of stuff that you can't find as easily or can't sort through it quite as easily as a website.
Well, I would also add that I think it's appeals to younger people in the way, what are they called, the weeb culture, where people who love the Korean and Japanese stuff, right? So young people are very much excited about something that's not their culture. That is something I think that's why, because I mean, then that started when I was a teenager, because I knew people that were really into manga and anime, 40 years ago, right? So I think it's really easy for people to access it on the thing that all young people have around them all the time, right? And if you wanted to go and get into comics, you could go to the library, but maybe the book you like is out. It's like everything is here. It's just so easy. It's never going to be out of stock.
Oh, and I love this point that Christopher just made on YouTube. Kids want things that weren't their parents' thing. That's a big deal too. This is, I remember that Marvel had that when DC, and then Image had it when, when they came around. We felt like, oh, this is a start of something new. And I think Webtoon still has a lot of that. That this is, and also Webtoon's content when it comes out much more frequently and much more much more rapidly and more densely than comic books do.
Those were some of the sticking points with manga, right? Even if you're like, you go and somehow you found some Shonen Jump, phone books, and it's just like, wow, there's a giant book full of comics, all right? Or even, what you said.
So every day of the week, there's comics that are getting updated, and there's just a ton of content there, and so that's different than comic books, where you're waiting forever for the next issue to come out.
All right, let's hit the next question. So, guys, how do you feel about Big Daddy Paul Pate, who wants to know why is there a stigma thinking that all boys are cartoonists and there's not a lot of females? What's up with that?
I would say that used to be more true, and so I can understand why that would be the perception. But when you go to Webtoons, I don't know if that's still the case. Think about indie comics. Corporate comics are a whole other thing, and then corporate comics are a lot about who you know. You definitely had to have the chops back in the day, but it was also kind of an all boys club. But indie comics, similarly, when SPX started, it was still pretty much a sausage fest. Going there 20 years later, and it was way more diverse and way more open to different things. And Webtoons is just an explosion of that. So that might have been true at one point, and it's becoming less true every day.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I guess I look at it in the broader sense of entertainment and what's happened in entertainment, starting with Star Wars, because Star Wars had a hero in it that was, with Princess Leia, and since then, it's been building and building and building and building. And so you have more and more and more and more young girls grow up, get into the fandom. There's a character that they can get into, like Buffy and all that kind of stuff, right? So it just builds out from what you consume. And then if you're inclined to want to try to make your own version of that, well, now there's something for you. Like in the 40s, it was mostly guys, right? In the business, it was mostly guys. Animation always had more women, right? And animation always had more women working in it from the very beginning than comic books did. So I think the broadening of the appeal of fandom to being less male-centric and becoming more inclusive of female characters, female authors, just results in the fact that now you're going to have generation. And again, I think back to when I was a teenager and the people who were into anime were more, it was more in that group of people I knew, there were more women than men. And so I just think it's been building from that. Because if you go back to Pulp, Pulp appealed to men. Pulp was adventures for boys. Tarzan was for boys. The Shadow was for boys. Flash Gordon was for boys. Right? Not that women didn't read that stuff. But now every show has female characters in it. Right? And you have some shows that are just girl-driven shows. And I directly relate that to the broadening of the culture, because starting with things like Star Wars, where you had a major character who was not the old-fashioned, was a play on the old-fashioned, Maid Marian or princess. So I think that when you play that character, you want to be that character, you want to write that character, you want to draw that character. And if you just look at what's happened to fandom of all, entertainment now, it is busted wide open. So I think a lot of young, I've been teaching for over 20 years now, and I always had slightly more female students than male students. And in the end, it was way more proportion of female to males in school. So I think that perception that his wife has is someone of that generation. But if they were to actually take in a broad overview of where it is now, I would say that there's, if not as many, maybe actually more female creators interested in generating fiction stories than men.
I love it. All right, thanks, guys. I want to make sure.
I don't know if you guys agree with that at all.
No, I think all of it's interesting, and I think the culture's changed. Especially being in the generation that I'm in, Gen X, and I hear a lot from a lot of my female friends of how they when they were young, maybe they grew up and they had a bunch of brothers who would always kind of like say these things aren't for you, or you can't play Super Mario with us, or there was more of a kind of like you stay over there thing. I can't say this in everybody's case because there's always a million different reasons for why somebody does what they do. But I think now that it's more wide open, even when we had Christine Larson on here like years ago as a guest on the show, she had a really interesting point, and she said there are a lot of female cartoonists in the industry who do not grow up with Marvel comics.
Oh, yeah.
They grew up reading manga. They grew up reading Sailor Moon. They grew up reading other stuff. Yeah, Vertigo. Yeah, thank you. And just things that weren't superheroes. Right. So just having that entrance point, I think, just allows more things to happen. I don't ever really think it like this is for boys and that's not for girls. I think it was just what was available and what people's, the optics of it.
Yeah. I know that there was, when I started in the 80s, there were editors who did not relish working with my girlfriend at the time because she was a female. And I specifically remember one editor losing his shit over the fact that she was going to draw an issue of The Losers. And he was like, girls can't draw war comics. And I remember him being in Dick Giordano's office, like losing his shit because, you can't, men draw war comics, women draw romance comics or whatever. So I think in that old school, there was some
horribleness.
Yeah, there was some
Right.
prejudice against people because I do think they sort of typecast you in the old days, right? And I mean, they can still get typecast now, but I think each generation after that is less that because actually, when I started at Marvel, there were 3 female editors, right? So I'm sure 10 years before that, there were not 3 female editors, right? Wheezy being one of them, right? So now how many female editors? There are tons, right? Some companies, there are probably at least half, if not maybe more. So I just think it's a generational.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would feel that way. If you walk through Artist Alley, there's got to be at least 50% women.
All right, that was a great discussion. Thank you. I don't mean to be pushy, but I want to now, since I kind of shook the tree. There's 15 questions in the chat. So, but no, that was fantastic. All right, I'm going to, Steve, if you're okay, I'm going to just start pressing on these. You know our good buddy known as Notorious JRD, J. Robert Deans from YouTube asks or posits, okay, it's impossible to find good real brushes anymore. And I understand Speedball is not what it used to be. What are some good brushes and India inks to get to teach myself traditional brush inking? Let's just start with the maestro, Mike Manley. Give him the business.
Somebody, I think I saw a YouTube, you can probably find it, of Mark Schultz talking about inking. And Mark is like one of the best inkers ever. He just has a fantastic technique. He still, I think, uses the Winsor Newton Series 7. That used to be the brush that everybody, and you want the Kolinsky sable. And that would be the one that everybody used. That was the one I remember. That was the one I was told, get yourself this brush. No ink is as good as the old ink because they make it differently now. I like the Black Star, Dr. Martens.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I did have, where is it? I just bought a little.
Oh, some Deleter ink.
Deleter ink.
What number is that, Mike? They have levels on it.
4.
Look at that. Krusty Critic came back out. You know how it works. Yes. Good
4.
job.
I also have. Where is it? I tried some of the new Pelican. They make it in these like little teeny little baby models.
Oh, those almost look like miniature painting joints.
And again, it depends upon. There is no one pen. There is no one brush, because every single cartoonist, like some guys are all pen. Bruce Timm inks everything with a marker. Right now, you look at Bruce's stuff, you think, oh, he's got this great calligraphy style. He's doing all this fantastic. Oh, he's probably using a brush. I remember sitting next to him at a con, and he was like, "No, I gave him a brush," and he was like, So he doesn't use a pen. He uses a marker, right? So what I would suggest is you get yourself like a synthetic brush, 2, 3, or 4. Dick Blick makes studio sables. I usually get like a 3 or a 4. You can try the high carb. You can try a deleter. Mark Schultz likes thin ink. Frazetta had thin ink. Wrightson had thin ink. If you like a very feathery, rendery, you probably want a thinner ink. Pen ink, you want thicker ink because you want it to, and the pen will put down a nice bead. So try a couple different inks. Try a couple different. I can ink with anything now.
You shared a Darkhawk commission pencils today. When you ink that, what are you going to ink it with?
I think I was going to try this deleter stuff. I also have what's this one? Is this the same thing?
And there's sometimes where you just kind of reach your hand over to the table and you pick something up and you use it.
Oh, there's this other one.
Hold on, I'm going to put that on the screen. I've never heard of that. Mega opaque.
Right.
Yo, that sounds dangerous.
So now, again, some artists, I miss the old ink because the old ink went down better and it was denser. Because they use shellac. Shellac is a bad thing, so they changed the formula for ink. Some people want really dense ink. Like if you look at Terry Austin's pages, his pages look like they came out of a printer. I mean, they were like so pristine and the ink is so dark. And he was one of those guys that would go back over.
He would hit it again.
Things very. And then you see Mike Mignola and it's all washy and muddy. And so there is really no one thing. And the only way you really find out is you get some paper, you get a brush, and you practice, right? There's pulling a line and pushing a line.
And I don't think people take into account the humidity of where a person's working. Like there are people who are like, I know there's some paper I can't use down here in Florida because it's already too wet.
Right. I mean, today, so I have my air conditioner on because of that storm. It is, even with the air conditioner on, it's humid.
Yeah.
The paper I was drawing on today was softer, even with my air conditioner on. Right.
Yeah.
So I always say you get a bunch of scrap paper and you just practice. You practice feathering away from you. You practice feathering toward you. You practice making thin lines. You practice making thick lines. You lock your elbow like this is all in a cast. And you ink with your shoulder. If you ink with your hand, that's like a little eye.
and you tire yourself out quicker too.
Well, you have more.
Also,
more steady, right?
Range of motion. Yeah.
Now, one of the benefits of working with someone like Villagrán or working with Al Williamson. I remember watching Al ink something, and I was using the same pen point as he was, a Hunt 108. I think in the old days he used to use a Gillette, but I think the one that he made, they stopped making. Anyway, I would take the pen and I would try to ink the pen get the same line. But I found out with both the pen and the brush, he was holding his a little bit further back than I was. So, he wasn't, I might have been like that. His was like,
oh, he held it back further. Right.
That gave him more spring. If you're up close inking, you're going to get a different. Now, that is something I only noticed because I was actually looking at him doing it. When I looked at him do it, then I tried it. Aha, right? So again, a lot of this might not be important to you. There's people who ink with a very dead line. They can ink with a marker.
The microns.
Right, yeah. If you look at somebody like Alex Toth, he doesn't have a beautiful line like Frazetta.
In one of his books, he was like, "Oh, I love these speedball pens." He was like using he was using a rollerball pen.
Yeah, he did. Gil Kane, a lot of people did back then. Or some guys would use, I know for a while, I think he was using a fountain pen. It gives you a very dead line. So there's no one line, there's no one pen, there's no one brush. But there are preferences that you will discover through practice. You know, one of the things I noticed when I would see somebody like Al, he doodled all the time. He would just draw directly with the pen. Sketches and sketches. There's sketchbooks put out now of this stuff. Same way with Rosetta and all those guys. They would actually practice drawing with the pen. You draw with a pen, but I'm not saying like sketch it first and then ink it. Actually draw with the pen. If you do things like that, you will find in your practice the things that you, I like that. No, I don't like that ink, or this pen is too stiff, or this pen is stiff. That's what I want. I don't want a wiggly. I think I commented the other day on a post by David Roach, who put up a great Neil Adams page. And I think one of the last times I talked to Neil was at the LuxCon, and which is an illustration con they have every year in Pennsylvania. The great thing about it is a whole bunch of people, Hildebrandt and Boris and Julie and all these great illustrators, so they can go up and talk to them, and they do workshops and everything. So I took Liang and Mimi with me. We'd gone a couple times. I started going about 2010, I think, was the first time I went. Anyway, this year, Neil was there. And so he's got this big pile of stuff, and he's sitting there. And I was showing the girls, oh, you know, this is a brush, this is a pen. And he hears it, and he chimes in, and he starts going on about how he used the Gillette 291. And no, it was too much of a pen for anybody. Nobody else, being very Neil Adams, you know, like what I do, nobody else could do. If they did it, they would die.
Too much. Which I just laughed at. But that's a very flexible nib. But you know who also used it? As at least as good as Neil did, if not better, was Stan Drake. And Mort Drucker. So, again, one guy's pen might be the favorite thing, and the other person goes, no, I don't want to do it. So I say, you know, get some scrap paper, buy yourself a couple things, work with it. I mean, I've seen Ricardo do amazing things with crappy, cheap, because it's here. Mm-hmm. It's here in muscle memory. Here in muscle memory. You can make anything work, you know, unless it's like splitting or something. Or then you just get a tool that you split and make that happen with.
Well, like Mark Schultz was like great split hair inking, right?
Right. And
fantastic stuff with that.
And even back in the old Draw magazines, I had a couple of articles on like tool hacks, like get some like brush pins or whatever, and mess them up. Make different lines with them. Just
or
like,
you can take a marker if you like that. I mean the Copics are pretty good, but they're expensive.
Yeah, don't do that.
Well, I remember what I was doing for a while was taking the pit pen, and I would drain the ink out, and then I would take that felt pad in there, put it on a paper towel that drains it out, and then I would take my eyedropper and drip ink. And then it had permanent India ink in it. I don't do that now. I just use the Copics because their ink is pretty good. So, but again, you know, like you said, it's like all kinds of hacks. It's really where you go, I like that or I don't like that. You know, the only thing I say is that if you use a non-permanent ink, your stuff is eventually going to get weird.
Sell your originals quick.
Yeah, if you saw that Liefeld Deadpool page, that he like all the background blacks are rendered in marker and they're dying out.
I have a FF cover by Sinnott in Romita. I mean, Sinnott in Buscema above my desk that I bought from Sinnott. in the 80s, and he signed it to me, but he signed it in like some kind of flair, so it's like,
Oh,
It's gone now, right?
completely gone now. And there's a lot of Gil Kane pages where it's like either it's like faded or sometimes it'll spread. The ink will actually spread.
Yeah.
Right. So, or it will transfer like onto
the
some
page
sketches.
on top of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like a lot of young cartoonists don't know that. So one of the things I would do in my class is I would say Sharpies are for writing living room on a box. They're not for doing permanent art, right? It actually has a nice point, and I can understand the appeal of that, but you can actually find something else that will give you that has permanent ink. If you use cheap supplies and you do something you really like, it's not going to last. It's going to
Joke's on you.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of people don't know, and and there are some artists who don't care. They're like, whatever, Gil Kane inked all that shit with a marker
Right.
because he was just blasting through it to get a paycheck.
All right, I'm going to put a pin in that. We got 14 questions.
That was a textbook answer, Mike.
Yeah,
Loved it.
good job. Thank you, Mike. And this is what is in front of you, you guys. At any point, could you have this expert counsel at your beck and call?
The oracle is right there with all the answers.
But they don't ask, y'all. They don't ask. They want to know what you have for breakfast. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? All right, let's do another one. This is for Steve. This is from our buddy Gar. Hi, what up, Gar? Gar says, question for Steve. Any favorite changes to anything in the new version of D&D 5e that you're looking forward to?
So for folks who don't know, played Dungeons and Dragons, the last edition came out 10 years ago in 2014. They have a new version. It has the same exact name. They're calling it like an update. So it's not a new version. And what they've really done is they've added a ton of cleanup from 10 years of playing with it and play testing and all the stuff they've produced. I don't know. I'm still excited for it. There's a lot of other variants that are coming out as well. Shadow Dark is kind of a spin-off of it, and it's also technically 5e, 5th edition, and Tales of the Valiant and this new Nimble 5e that's kickstarting right now. Those are all really interesting to me. I tend to think it's going to be D&D will be more like the way poker games are played, where you say, here are the house rules we're playing with when we played this game. Aces are wild, or deuces are wild, or something like that. So I feel like you're going to be like, okay, we're going to say, potions are bonus actions, things like that. This is all comics people are just like zoning right out. I'm excited for it. I'll be more excited when the DMG comes out, the Dungeon Master's Guide comes out, and the Monster Manual comes out. But overall, I like what they're doing. I think the art's lovely. I'm excited to get the books. I don't have them yet, but everything I've seen looks interesting at the very least. And so far, it kind of breaks some of the stuff I've been doing, but also it's liberating some of the stuff I'm doing. So I can always go into a deeper dive on my own channel or something like that, but or just pop me a note and I'll answer in full. Not to bore the comics folk.
No, well, I mean, it's ask us questions. It doesn't
Right, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited. I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to make more stuff for it.
So on that note, Gar has a follow-up question. Do you have any content ready to go for anything with the new D&D version?
Technically, they've said the new version is compatible with what came before it, and it is with like a big chunky adapter between the two systems. Technically, we can't produce things even semi-officially for it because they haven't released the license. What for folks who don't know about how the gaming thing works, how D&D works is specifically for the last 20 years or so, they've had basically an open license that lets people make software for their operating system. If Dungeons and Dragons is an operating system, all of us could make apps. We were limited in the kind of apps we could make, but we had a free right to do it, and that's how I made these books. That's how I could sell something. I just can't say the word Dungeons and Dragons on here. I can say 5th edition, and everybody knows what we mean, and we all. And there was legalese I had to include in the back of this. There's a whole kerfuffle backstory I could go into at some other point, but the idea is I can make stuff for it. I've got a new book that's coming out this month in PDF form, and probably next month it'll come out in zine form. There's another Kickstarter this year. All my stuff's compatible with 5e, and if Wizards holds true and everything, all the new stuff is also compatible, all my stuff will also be compatible. So yeah, I'm going to keep making stuff. The audience seems to like it, and people who get my stuff are thinking outside the box anyway. So yeah, it's all good.
Awesome. Thank you, Gar. That was great.
Thanks, Gar.
All right. So hold on. I thought I cleared the show. Cleared the shelf. Give me 1 second, you guys. All right. So let's go to another one. Our good buddy Francis. What up, Francis? Francis says, I just found out about trim lines and bleeds, but I don't know how to apply that to my paper. Mike or Steve, do you want to take a quick stab at this?
Sure. Trim lines are the part that the pages get cut. Anything outside that trim area is going to be cut when the pages are printed. They basically print every page in a comic, whether it's bound or not, is printed larger. And so if the art's going to go to the edge, you have to print larger than that artwork, larger than that trim area. And then those trim lines are where the cutters come down or where the staples in the middle, the fold in the middle falls. Anything past that, definitely not going to be seen by anybody. The bleed is yeah, it's going to get cut off or hidden underneath other artwork. And the bleed is the extra part the printer wants you to include because there's wiggle room on the press. And if you just drew up to the trim line, there's going to be shifting and there'll be a white space where, or depending on the color of the paper will show through where your line work, you didn't go far enough. So the bleed is the extra part we have to draw that gets cut off at the trim line. You also hear a phrase called the live area. That's the part where the printer guarantees will not be shifted off the off the page. And I'd also say if you're ever going to do hardcovers, think about adding a little extra room to that live area toward the spine, toward the inner spine of the book, because as the book folds, they tend to have a bowing to them, kind of like a bow and arrow.
Right.
That bowing area, you want to make sure that the artwork isn't too close to that, so people aren't trying to bend the spine in half to try to read the stuff in the middle.
Right.
So this is an actual piece of Marvel comic cover stock. So this line here would be where the staple would be, right? The staple, right? What I'm doing is back. So the staple, right? You don't want anything important beyond that line, because it might get crunched, right? On the other opposite side, the same thing. You don't want anything so this line is nothing important in that line. There's always this little wiggle room, right? So this is full size. Once it's reduced 67%, that space is like an eighth of an inch. That outside on here is actually this is all the pages are stacked. The blade comes down because I used to work at a printer, right? And so you get all your stuff and you trim on three sides. Not the side that has the staple, but the top, bottom, and the
outside. Right.
The outside. And there's the thing I worked on, the trimmer I had two things. One that came down and pressed everything down and held it. And then the blade came down and cut it. Well, everything could just wiggle a little bit. Now I was trying to find a sheet of, if I had a sheet of cover of actual DC paper.
And I think it's funny that a lot of people have never seen legit like Marvel or DC board.
Right. So, I mean, all companies use the same specs, but basically, so that was on the cover. I don't have a piece up here now, but anyway, you can find a page format on the web that will give you, because you basically have the bleed. So in some books are bleed, which means that the art goes to the edge, actually to the edge of the page, or something like Archie or usually the kid-friendly stuff, where it doesn't go, like you look at the old Marvel comics, nothing bled. Everything was in the middle of the page.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing went outside of that. Now, because the printing is better and it's more expensive, they can go to the edge. But coming in from that edge, usually about 1/4 of an inch, you will see on the board is a line. None of the balloons or anything, the live area, nothing important extends into the bleed because it could get cut off.
Especially dialogue.
Right. Yeah. You don't want your balloon getting cut. Right. So the live area.
You got Mike digging in the crates.
I just had some out. You guys go ahead while
Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat again. Nothing up my sleeve.
Well, I had some out, but then
For anyone joining us, Mike has turned invisible.
Yeah, he cast the invisibility spell.
I had to put it.
We're live, folks.
I like that the chair is just moving and he's just
I didn't get any love for my Rocky and Bullwinkle gag. Come on. That's right. Chris definitely don't want my balloon getting cut. Don't cut my balloon.
I don't know where I put it.
That's all right, Mike.
But anyway, you can find the format online, or you can buy. I think every comic book paper maker actually has those lines printed in non-photo blue, like Canvas. Strathmore makes comic book paper. A lot of people do. It's already on there, so you can either rule it out yourself, and you could find the measurements for that format on a 10 by 15 live area on a piece of 11 by 17 paper.
And depending on the printer you're using, they will often provide you with a PDF or EPS or Adobe Illustrator or other document that has all those things set up for you. So you can talk to your printer, and yours is not the first book they've printed, and so to save them trouble, they often provide templates.
The main thing is to make sure that your artwork is drawn proportional.
Yeah.
All right. You can eyeball keeping things in, a 1/2 inch from the edge, right? You can do that, right? You don't have to draw all the little things, but you do have to make sure that it's proportional to 10 by 15.
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing.
Right. If you don't do that, then you're going to have to take it into Photoshop and start,
But and also if you're working digitally, because this also applies to digital working. There's a lot of people that have already made kind of like templates, or you can even just like steal something off the internet that's or old school. You can take a page of board that's already lined and scan that into your computer and then use that as a template. There's only a way to do that. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, you can find templates on. I'm sure there's like many templates online.
All right, let's keep it moving. So here's a good one. Our good buddy Harlan Littlejohn. Hello, Harlan. Harlan says, "How do you solidify a consistent style of drawing? I love all sorts of drawing styles, but I have a concrete vision of what I want in my mind's eye. But it always seems so far away." This is the style question. This is the bugaboo with a lot of people we talk to. How do you find your style?
What do you say to that, Jamar?
So I'm sure somebody said it better than I will ever. But it seems like style is a mashup of things that you love and things that you can't do right, which turns into your working style.
That's great.
Oh, I found the page, but I don't know whether it will actually show up. So you can see.
I'm going to hide that comment if I can find it. Where are you? Oh, you got it.
Got it.
I don't know. It's my.
I can see it.
We saw it, Mike.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Cobwebs out.
So there are the inside border, the inside live area, right? So because now there's bleed, what's happened is, actually, I did have an older page. Because things are bleed now, your live area is actually smaller. Here's an old Quasar page. And here's the DC, so you can actually see the live area on this is actually bigger than the live area on this. The live area on here is probably, you go in that far. You go in that far. So the image area for you to draw is actually smaller than it was before, because these are the same. These pages are they're the same size. So in order to add the trim and to the bleed, you had to make this area, the live area, actually smaller to fit inside. So, that's one of the things that I don't like about it.
Cool. Thanks for finding that, Mike. That was great to show. So let's finish this style question. So I'm going to put it back on the thing. So how do you solidify a consistent style of drawing? I think this is kind of an easy answer, and not that it's an easy question. I feel like it's just a lot of drawing. You know, you kind of draw to the point where you're not surrounding yourself with muses. You don't have a stack of comics in Italian albums next to you. You're just drawing. And somewhere in there, after a while, especially through a couple of projects, you'll kind of see how your style kind of creates itself. You know, you kind of draw something the same way over and over again, and it may not be what you intended, but it's kind of what your hand does. I'm simplifying this, but, you know, say after, 20 or 40 or 60 or 80 pages or something, you're going to find a rhythm to how you're making things. I think when people chase styles, I don't think it ever really comes out to what they want it to be, but that's my answer. I don't know, Steve, do you have a thing to add?
I love that answer. I think that's right on. I think that's I found my style when I stopped trying to draw like anybody else.
Yeah, that's good. All right, Harlan, I want to try to keep it going here, and guys, you've been so fantastic by loading us with questions, and I just want to make sure I can get to as many of these as possible. Here's a good one. Danny Nixon from YouTube. Hello, Danny Nixon. Danny says, I'm nearing, see, I know what I'm doing. So this kind of ties into the last one. I'm nearing the 100-page mark for completed pages. Congratulations. At that level, what skills or base level would you expect to see from a cartoonist at this stage? Mike, you want to take a stab at that?
Well, I have no idea, because I don't know what your starting point was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for one person, 100 pages would be here, and another person it would be here. It's like, because everybody starts at a different. Nobody's in the block. It's not like running a race where everybody's on the blocks in the same. It's completely different. One person can do 100 pages and they don't get any better. Marginally better. Another person can do 20 pages and make real progress. There's no. I think it's what your personal goals are and what you're doing to achieve those personal goals. Right? Because, again, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different ability, thought process, ability to sit in. Some people can sit in a chair all day. Some people sit down for an hour and they're like, I'm done. Right? And that does tie into the other thing, because consistency comes from practice. And you know, when you're working in animation, you're watching a Bugs Bunny cartoon. It all looks like Bugs Bunny. It doesn't look like, whoa, wait a minute, that's Billy Bunny, and that's Joe Bunny, and that's like, I don't know, even look like a bunny.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually make model sheets, and all the, you know, and there's people who animate, and in animation you have people actually go over the animators' drawings and clean up to put them on model, right? So comics is usually just one person, maybe two if you have an anchor. So it's all about, you know, to draw the characters on Judge Parker, or say draw the Phantom characters on Phantom, or Bugs Bunny, or whatever. It's proportion. You're repeating the same proportions. The nose is so long, the eyes are so this, the head is so this. You know, it's square until it, you know, goes around. That just comes from practice and thinking about construction,
Mm-hmm.
right? In animation, you know, everybody works on Samurai Jack. It's got to all look like Gendy because he's the dude. When I'm working on Superman, it had to look like Bruce because he was the dude,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I had to learn how to draw like Bruce, and there were model sheets that said, like this, not like this. In comics, you kind of come up with that on your own because you go like, yeah, I like that. That's looking good. Oh, what's wrong with this? This drawing doesn't look good, right? And then you have to sort of figure out like, how do I engineer this drawing to look the way I want?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, 100 pages is great. I would say when you've done
Don't do,
pages,
don't do it to him, Mike.
you
Don't do it to him, Mike.
when you do that, some of those questions you ask will then be answered,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I was going to add to that, and I'm sure every cartoonist in this chat has that almost like that ping, that push alert that happens when they're working, where all of a sudden I kind of call it leveling up from a video game perspective. Something that you were working on just got a lot easier than it used to be, than the last time you did it. You know, it may not be a giant difference from one page to the next, but even when you're drawing and you kind of hit that, oh, okay, it's like this, and it just happens. You know, you're always kind of gradually moving up, and sometimes it happens when it happens. But even to finish Mike's thing out, you know, 100 pages is a great milestone. But you know, time is the best test. So just keep drawing.
Find your favorite artist. Find 3 of your favorite artists.
And cut off their heads.
And cut it right. If you look at their first 100 pages, and then look at their work now, you will see a progress. You look at the first 100 pages, the first 100 strips of Calvin and Hobbes, the first 100 Peanut strips.
Yeah.
Right? You will see an evolution that the artists themselves was probably not even aware of as they were doing it, because it's like, here's this eyeball, and then there's this. Eventually, Charlie Brown's proportions changed.
He used to have like a watermelon head, and then it got rounder.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he did.
Snoopy looked like a dog at the start.
Right. Yeah. Look at Snoopy. He probably changed the most.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the characters, and he didn't one day go, I will now make this like this. It just organically happened because of his process, you know. And I always say now that your style at this point is the display of your knowledge. Because cartooning, for the most part, is pulling stored information out of your head to create a drawing, right? So like you're trying to draw a hand and it's like, it's really sucking, I'm having a hard time. Why is it? because you don't know how to draw a hand from that, like some weird angle, right? Now, if you've drawn a million hands, you've probably drawn that angle, right? Right. Draw a Kirby hand the first time, probably ain't a Kirby hand. It's kind of like a weird hand, right? And then you learn to do your version. It's like one of the things that's hard for people is to draw very naturalistic poses in the beginning. Like somebody eating. Like how do you hold you're cutting your steak, right?
Right.
You've been doing since you were like a little teeny kid. But how many times have you drawn somebody, how do they sit, right? I remember when I started doing something like Judge Parker, which is all normal people, I had to level up my game on that stuff, right? Because it's completely different than having the Hulk punch some dude in the head.
Right.
That's you're not going to compare that to like, oh, that time that I punched that guy in the head, his head totally went the other way. You know.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. And thank you, Harlan. I hope you got what you wanted from that. All right, let's move on. And guys, how do you feel about, do you want to do overtime tonight or you want to start wrapping? How do you feel, Steve?
I'm game for the questions as long as we feel like we've satisfied enough of the.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm good when you guys are good.
All right, so let's make it a little easy for a second. Jared D asks, "What's a greater studio hazard, dog or cat hair?"
Vomit.
All right, moving along.
That's it.
So here's another one. So in that vein, Jared D asks, "Who was the first creator you met?" Now this is IRL in real life, not somebody that you studied. Who was the first creator you met, either at a show or a school library visit, who reinforced your mind that, yeah, I'm going to be a cartoonist? I'll answer that first. It's funny because part of my backstory is that I didn't really see a lot of people doing this stuff for real growing up. So I at some point figured out that this was a real thing that real people did, but I hadn't met anybody. I was probably in my 20s, and I met Rob Armstrong, the strip artist of Jumpstart. He doesn't remember meeting me because I was with some goon at a book signing. But
goon, yeah, who's this goon coming up to me?
And also, just to also add to that Rob's a black guy, and that was also something that was just very not, you didn't see a lot of black cartoonists. So, I didn't really have an amazing interaction with him, but he signed my book, and then he was doing he did like a little workshop, and he did a couple of sketches of some of his characters, and he just banged them out like it was just all muscle memory. And even though I had been drawing for a long time, the effortlessness of how he just drew Crunchy like the cop from his strip was just like, yo, this is like a magic trick. And these magicians all kind of speak the secret language. That was really that wasn't lost on me. But it wasn't like something he said, or like Mean Joe Green threw his towel at me in the hallway or something. But it was just seeing another person in real life who was being
threw a sweat rag on you as he went by. Here you go, kid.
Really left a mark on me and made me really feel that I could do this for real. Steve, what about you?
I don't think I had a moment like that. I think I knew I was going to be a cartoonist before I ever met one.
Yeah, I mean, well, just to answer Jared's question, that's kind of how I, not like I didn't figure it out before that, but
I could see it being a thing where you go, oh, I've heard that story so many times, like, oh, that's a job. I think maybe because of reading comics and the comics I read all had bylines, and it was Sturdy Steve or a Smiling Stan. I knew there were people who were making these things, so I thought, I'm a person. And this might be a thing I can do. So I didn't have a moment like that. I had lots of great experiences meeting creators, but
Who was the first you met? Who was the first?
The first one I met,
Jamar Nicholas.
I think I might have gone to a creation convention in New York City and just went there and saw them all. The first one I might have stumbled across might have been might have been Linsner, or might have been I remember going to a New York convention and just seeing Paul Chadwick. I'm sorry, that might have been one of the Philly conventions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's things like that. I don't think I ever. But it wasn't like this was the first cartoonist I met. It wasn't that. How about you, Mike?
I was trying to think, because I think the first cartoonist I met might have been Keith Pollard, who was also from Detroit, at a show when I was around. I think this was after we had moved to Detroit to Ann Arbor. And I don't remember if my dad drove me or I was driving by myself. But I remember meeting him. And I remember him giving me, I think, a nice critique and telling me that I was drawing my heads too big or something.
Mm-hmm.
Probably looking at a lot of Wally Wood, who tended to draw stockier people. And then I remember, probably after that, the thing that always sticks in my mind was meeting Walt, and I believe Milgram and Vosberg, and I believe Starlin, because there was a show in Farmington, Michigan, and all those guys were there. And a bunch of them were, like Starlin and Milgram and Vosberg, I believe, were all also from Michigan. There was like a little Michigan posse, and then Walt was there. And Walt was just finished working on Battlestar Galactica. And he was very nice, and he gave me a really nice critique. And he's actually the only professional that I ever wrote a fan letter to, and he says that he still has it, and if I ever cross him, he'll release it publicly. So I think, so I think Pollard was the first, because there, there might have been a show, but then you might have had to work that weekend and you couldn't go, kind of a thing. It wasn't like now where there's like a million shows and there's a million cartoonists. It was, this was like pre-Star Wars. It's probably around 75, 6, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Getting old, bro.
I got old, yeah. So I think that was the first person I met.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I knew that you could do this.
Yeah.
I knew by then. I knew from the time I was 13, or maybe even before that, because my grandfather being an artist, and they used to have those things on the Disney, Wonderful World of Disney, where they would show the animators. So I knew that people drew comics, created the stuff for a living, even when I was a little kid. I knew that.
All right, thanks for that, person. I forgot who said that already. Was it JRD? All right, let's turn the wheel over to our good buddy Spivo, representing Uncanny Comics in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, one of the world's largest malls. Spivo, how are you? Spivo says, I should be closing out my store, but I'm here watching. I won't tell. But also, Jamar, what did you have for breakfast? I will tell you what I have for breakfast, guys. I enjoy a nice Greek yogurt. I try to eat really healthily. I know I don't look like it, but I had a Greek yogurt with some fresh fruit, a kiss of honey. It's like a bam. and a little bit of flaxseed. That's what I eat every morning with my morning coffee. Thank you, Steve. They try to trip me up with that one.
Mike, do you want to say what Jamar has for breakfast?
Yeah, what did I have for breakfast? Mike has made me really good eggs. Mike's a great cook.
Yeah, actually, that's what I had for breakfast. I had a couple of eggs with some feta cheese and an everything bagel.
Nice. What about you, Steve? Steve doesn't eat breakfast. You one of those guys?
No, a protein bar and a fiber cracker every day.
See, I don't.
Some days I don't. I go all the way. I actually will fast all the way into the afternoon.
Mm.
Some days you wake up and you're like, I'm going to be working hard today, so I need to put some protein in my brain, you know?
Rocket fuel, right?
Yeah.
So to that, also our good buddy James from YouTube. James is one of the sharpest dressed avatars that I've ever seen. James says, donuts or bagels? I will say I'm kind of a donut, but I can't eat that stuff anymore. But I do appreciate a good donut. What about the rest of you guys?
If I don't eat donuts either. Being type 2, you can't really eat it. So I have to watch my carbs. So I know that I can eat the bagel. My carbs were great because I balance the fat with a little bit of carbs and I'm good. Like sugar doesn't spike. If I eat a donut, which you would like how it tastes, but actually donuts always gave me indigestion. There's something about eating a donut that would just give me indigestion. So I haven't eaten a donut probably since the pandemic.
Yeah.
And that they're definitely off my diet now. No.
Yeah,
It would have to be, I like an everything bagel because, that'll be, I can even just eat half of one, sometimes put a little cream cheese on it,
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't eat donuts. It's
Right.
like a Pop-Tart. It's like, I remember as a kid loving it, and you can sort of remember that smell, but when you eat one, it's like, it's not very good.
What did you just do?
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah. It's like a lot of things like that you remember eating as a kid, and then you eat it as an adult. You go like, no.
Well, to that, which is funny, I got very sage advice from one of my dear departed uncles. He said to me as a younger man, Jamar, at a certain age, usually around the age of 25, a man can't digest McDonald's Big Macs anymore. So
it's certainly not probably the kind of Big Mac that your uncle ate when he was 25.
So that stuck in my head, and I would, if I had a time machine, past Jamar would be very surprised that I don't eat fast food like I used to. Well, I don't even have that like impetus anymore. But yeah, I'm a donut.
If I had to eat fast food, I would try to get something like a bean burrito from Taco Bell. Have them put some tomatoes in it or something.
Mm.
But yeah, I can't eat any of that stuff. I mean, I should eat it, number one, but I cannot eat.
You can't run for the border like you used to, Mike Manley.
Well, it doesn't. It's like if you get beans with tomatoes and lettuce and, onions or whatever. Okay. If you stay away from the meat, the whatever squirrel meat or whatever it is they got. But I just
we lost our sponsor. Yeah.
I just find that I just cannot, after 45, I just can't digest that. I can eat it, right? But it doesn't, and you're not getting any nutrition from it. So what you're doing is you're just like, I'm going to take the stuff it in my stomach so I don't feel hungry, but you don't feel good.
No.
Right? You don't feel good. And now, because of the health stuff I went through, I just can't, like a BLT sounds like so good. I can't eat a regular BLT anymore. It's got too much salt in it. It tastes great. There's nothing like like bacon, but there was a lot of stuff that's just sort of like off the list. Like recently been eating a lot of Impossible burgers and things like that. I eat stuff like that. I try to eat. So sometimes I'll have I'm not a vegetarian, but I will have a day where I don't really eat any meat. I'll still eat like cheese or something.
This is Paul Pate's favorite part of the show. We talk about what we ate. I didn't know that was a thing, but okay.
Well, it is important. I have to attest. I mean, I had heart surgery, right? I had like all my pipes are clogged, right? And luckily, I didn't have a heart attack or stroke or anything. And you sometimes you don't know, and everybody is different. Somebody can eat that stuff and they'll live to 100, and some people eat that stuff and at 35 they stroke out.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, because this is a very stressful job, and you're going to put a lot of hours in the chair, that the better you treat yourself, the better your body will treat you, because it's just long hours. Like everybody, stiff back, stiff neck. Your eyes are not going to be what they were in your 60s as they were in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been very good about not eating bad, and then you choose you choose. It's like the mix, right? It's like, okay, if I'm going to eat the sugar, or I'm going to eat this carb, I got to balance it with this other thing.
Right.
So,
That's really important.
yeah, and this is a demanding job, so some days you're like, oh shit,
Mm-hmm.
I take time to cook something. I got to do the podcast. So yesterday I made chili because today I knew I was going to have the podcast, so I could have my chili about 45 minutes before the show went on, right? So.
Mm-hmm. I just had I had a thought and then it just fell out of my head. But also think about like the last couple generations of cartoonists who were like hard drinkers, right? Or smokers or both. And how just like
what's wrong with you, Jamar? You don't have a stogie in your mouth right now.
Well, I'm just saying that was just kind of like more the norm, and it's just,
a lot of them also had shrapnel in their bodies.
you took one in the rice patties. Yeah, I mean,
well, actually, the previous generation probably would have been druggies, and then the generation before that would have been the drinkers, or like what happened with Frank Miller. He banged himself up pretty good, from drinking, evidently, and the job is hard enough. Life is hard enough. Your genetics, you may be predisposed to being diabetic or overweight or all kinds of other things. So it's like, I don't drink. And, one of my greatest heroes right away when I was trying to get in, Wally Wood died, right? In his last several years of his life were really hard. He was he was younger than me. He was 53?
Mm.
So I'm 10 years older than Wally Wood. And if you see a picture of Wally Wood, and you see a picture of me, Wally Wood looks like he's 93. He looks older than my dad. I mean, he looked like 100 miles of bad road, and you just cannot do speed and like drink and all that. It's just gonna eat you up, man.
Yeah. Oh, you've seen those memes and those JPEGs of like the cast of Cheers at their real ages and stuff. The 80s were rough. Sherman Hemsley looked like he was 70. He was 40. You know what I'm saying?
Archie Bunker was like 49 or something like that. And he looks, all those people look way older.
B. Arthur looked like 102.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but, even, we at this point in our history, we know better, right? And it's kind of like, well, you kind of know what you're doing. And if you continue to do it, you're going to pay the price. or you know, self-care. We live in the era of self-care, of trying to like eat clean. We're eating good, you know what I mean? So, you know, I don't really know where.
But you know, I will say one of the things I really learned from going my journey and talking to the people who helped me through my journey. For some people, food is like literally like a drug.
Yeah.
It is literally like heroin or you know an opiate. And I had a couple nurses, and one of the nurses' father passed away, basically because he couldn't change his diet. And for some people, it's like that chemical thing happens when they eat, and they just can't stop eating badly. It's so tied in with their body chemistry and their mental things. So, you know, it's just it's you know, it's really bad. Like you eat good when you're in the hospital, and as soon as you get out of the hospital, they start eating all the bad stuff. In fact, the guy who drove me, because when I went to the hospital, I had my heart surgery. The guy who drove me had the same doctor, had the same operation that I had. And he still eats like shit, and he still smokes because he goes, well, they'll be able to fix me up. Now, he was a guy from overseas and probably smoked all of his life. And he's like, nope, I didn't change my diet. I don't eat everything I should. And I'm thinking like, man, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine saying like, I'm going to still, you know, after they cracked my chest open, they didn't have to do that to me, but they have these amazing surgeries now. But still, after you go through all that stuff and you have to like rebuild yourself, why would you go back and like do the same thing? But a lot of people do, man. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
I was just like, I was shocked. It was like the same doctor, the same hospital, the same procedure,
Same bad channel,
the same bad behavior.
Well, I'd like to answer the question.
Sure, Steve, go for it.
Donuts. That's it.
Little mini chocolate donuts.
Oh, that's it. That's donuts. It's mostly donuts.
The breakfast.
What's your favorite donut? Krispy Kreme?
No, I don't have them. They're all great.
All, even like the stale little Debbie's in the box. It's like
yes.
powdered rock.
No. Okay, when the powdered donut gets moist and it starts to get that, it starts turning into like a paste. No, that's bad.
That's good. That's the kind you can like push against the wall and eat it later.
Oh, now we lost another sponsor.
Yeah, sorry, hostess.
Sorry, little Debbie.
Sorry,
I'm never coming back for you.
All right, so here's somebody slipped under the Indiana Jones wall. David Peterson of Mouse Guard fame asks, "Where'd Steve's mustache go?"
It's here. It's here. It's just off camera. It's
he did one of these.
He's Maskatron.
Good to see you, David. David, you should be hanging around more. Yeah.
I just wanted to look pretty for Mike.
Oh.
You do. You're such a succulent young man.
Yo. All right, let's keep it moving, you guys.
Another sponsor. Yeah, we can do speed. We can do a speed round.
No, we're almost done. But
all right.
People keep trying to ask more questions. Get out of here. Bill, our buddy Bill O'Donnell says, question for the group. For con sketches and commissions, do you guys prefer to sketch before the con or just sketch at the show? Steve and then Mike.
Before the con, so I can spend time working the table. I usually don't have an assistant at the table, and the time my head is down is the time I can't be answering questions or making sales.
Nice.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, I canceled my appearance. I think I said at the beginning of the show, I canceled my appearance at Terrificon.
No, you didn't tell anybody. You told us.
COVID is too high right now, and after going through what I've gone through, my Facebook feed all week for the last since San Diego is like everybody going, I got COVID. So I'm not doing the show because COVID's too high, and Connecticut's one of the places. I just can't be in a public place where there's too many unmasked people. So I feel bad because there's a lot of people I wanted to see there. So hopefully next year we won't be in a wave of COVID, and maybe I can do the show. So I've been doing, because I haven't done any show. This has been the first show that I've done since the pandemic. So I do the stuff before the show, because part of the problem at the show is that your attention span is broken. So you're starting to draw something, and somebody usually asks very often for a character that their favorite character, like Booster's Gold. I don't know Booster's Gold. I probably never read a Booster's Gold comic. So if I'm going to do Booster's Gold, I got to get my phone out and look at a bunch of pictures of Booster's Gold. And then somebody wants you to sign a bunch of books. And then, oh, hey, you're talking to somebody. Oh, you're going to. And then somebody brings a bunch of cards. It's so fractured. I think now I prefer doing it before the show, because I don't mind drawing. It's fun. But it's hard to draw if your chain of thought is constantly broken like every 30 seconds, right? And when I went with the girls, they could sell the book, they could sell the art, they could do that, and I could, they could help me run my table. Now I don't have anybody to help me run my table. So, and I don't like to do a bad sketch. In fact, I was talking to my rep, Filippo, today, because I'm trying to finish up these commissions I have now that I was going to take in person to Con. And if things are tight, I will take the extra money myself to mail them directly to the people if that's what I had to do, because I don't want to do a bad sketch. I don't like doing a bad drawing for people. I'm haunted by bad drawings that somebody would come up to you at the end of the show and go, please, please, please draw, whatever. And then they always want Azrael has a really complicated, costume, right? And so I don't want to do a bad drawing. And I charge a fair amount of money for my sketches. But so also because of that, I don't want to, it's like if you charge somebody $50 for a hamburger, it's got to be like Angus beef, and it's got to be like Kobe beef. It's got to be like $50 worth. It can't be McDonald's, right? And so I don't want to do a drawing that I feel bad about, and then maybe that person feels like, oh, I spent all that money. Oh, this dude sucks. I don't want that. I just don't. I don't want to do that. So
yeah,
at shows like Baltimore, you will go through a little lull. So you might be. Or what you have to do is you have to go back after you're tired. You've been in the show all day. You go out to dinner, or you don't go out to dinner. You go back to your hotel room and you order room service so you can do your sketches, because the guy's leaving tomorrow, and you got to be there. And then and then you got to stay there if you don't have somebody running your table, because the guy can come by at any moment and go, "Where's my sketch?" And I make people pay me for their sketches up front, because I'm not going to draw it and then you skip. Right?
That happens a lot. It's just like, what happened to dude? Oh, he had to go, or they just never come back.
Yeah, so I learned that early on. If you want me to draw, I'll be happy to draw. If I had to mail it to you at my own expense, like I said, I will do that. But I'm not going to draw it and not get my money.
You need to hand out those hockey pucks like a Cheesecake Factory. Or you carry that around a con and it beeps when your shit's ready.
Now it's all with cell phone numbers. You take their cell phone number and you text them when it's ready.
But now they have your cell phone number.
Right. Right. And then they start sending you dick pics. See? No way.
Hey, Steve, you up?
No.
WID.
What did you think of that? What did you think of the new Deadpool movie?
Steve's like, oh man, what did I do?
That's true.
Can I borrow your Netflix account, Steve?
Yes.
All right, thank you. That was a great question.
I'm at the Kroger. I left my Kroger card at home. Can I get your number?
Yeah, let me get your rental code. I'm at Suncoast.
I just give them my room key and they can come pick it up.
That's even better. Don't cancel yourself, Steve. We'll keep it.
I'm at the Sheraton. I'm at floor 12, door ajar.
Oh my God, you guys are crazy. All right, so we're gonna try to wrap this up. We got
We're
a
gonna make
couple.
Steve go eat that moist donut he's been saving all day from the hurricane rations.
It's my reward.
So James has a spicy question. Spicy James. I'm gonna call you Spicy James now. Spicy James says, "Gentlemen, curly or straight?"
Shimp.
Nice.
Yeah, is that your answer too, Steve?
My answer is shimp.
Sure. Depends on the humidity. But we go back to that question again.
All right, we'll put that in the pocket for later. All right,
It could be its own episode.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode. I kind of feel like these things keep repopulating. I swear I got rid of them, and they just keep popping back up.
I haven't done it.
What do we got?
There's 5 more, but I'm gonna maybe round robin this. All right, so this is a good one from Bill. Another one from Bill. Thoughts on color acrylic paint markers? And I'm thinking like the Posca paint markers, or those brands that are like, you're seeing a lot of people use Posca markers to do remarks. Steve and Mike Manley. Like, I don't know, Mike, have you seen that? That's been a thing the last couple of years. People are like doing whole face sketches on the cover of comics.
Yeah.
On top of it.
I like on the pop fun, those pop boxes too, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have not used a paint marker.
Okay. How about you, Steve?
No, I wouldn't. That's not part of my.
That's not your deal.
No, I haven't really played with that. I think it's cool looking. Those who are good at it.
Yeah. My buddy Ben Harvey, who has been doing a lot of cover work lately, that's kind of a new tool in his utility belt. He does a lot of remarks with. He does really great Posca paint things. But I mean, that's just also a different thing. Like, say, if you're going to offer that, people know that you're good for doing remarks, and that becomes a part of your thing, which probably lines right up with like doing like blank cover sketches, or doing commissions, or doing all that other kind of stuff. Just something else that you're doing at a show.
I've done some blank cover sketches, but to be honest, I don't like doing it. They're not fun to draw on. That little, and you don't want to get it dirty, and you don't want to get anything bent, and you got to like spin it. I always feel like really cramped drawing on that.
Yeah, and that paper's not great either.
Yeah. No, they're better than they used to be, but
for sure.
Yeah, so I charge a fair amount to do them because I really don't. I know people like it. Personally, I don't. I would much rather draw on I'd much rather draw. I usually draw them like twice up. I'd much rather draw it on a nice sheet of paper, good paper. It's Strathmore 400. So
Mike Manley's Darkhawk, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget it.
So
respect the architect.
Yeah. So I want to draw on a nice sheet of paper. I want to do something. That's just me. Some people, they don't care. They draw.
All right. This is we've got 4 left, and 2 of these are by the same people, so I might just pick. All right, so we're gonna go back to our buddy Harlan, and this is a tech question that we all know. We've all in secret talked about this inside our circles. Do you have any recommendations for printers that scan and print in bigger sizes, like 11 by 14, to finish up illustrations with inking? Guys, is it time to reveal the secret of the all-in-one scanner? Yeah, what you got back there, Mike?
That is a
Is that the brother or the Epson workforce?
that's an Epson. Just bought this. It's wireless. I bought this because the printer on my brother done.
Not your brother Dave.
Not my brother Dave. No,
Okay.
Dave.
Or Mark. No.
So I bought this, but I'm still scanning on my old one just because I haven't had a chance to mess around with trying to scan wireless yet.
Yeah.
Right. So like with I bought this. I think my buddy John has one. I think Brett has one. A couple other people I know have one.
I have that one too.
So my advice is this. This is what I learned. You buy what a lot of other people have. You pay attention to whether it's at the end of its product line. If the last time they made it was like 2017, you're kind of screwed. Because what will happen is it will stop making things like ink for it. Then you can't get the original cartridge. You got to go through a second party to get the cartridge. So look at if they had the FW7X 2102, did they go to the 2103? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go on their site to see how old is the version of that you're looking at, because you can buy some aftermarket or you can buy some. But if it's old, it'll be harder to get. You might not be able to repair it, basically. And you might not be able to get the ink for it.
Mm-hmm. That's
like my brother served me so well for years. So I knew I had to get a new one. So I bought this, but I can still use it. If this quits, hopefully I learned how to use this one before this one dies. But I did learn that you have to look at where along the product line the thing you're looking at to buy is. If it was like, oh, they stopped making that in 2019. Oh, okay, well, we're already 2024. That's 5 years ago. Maybe they don't make drivers for it anymore. All of a sudden one day, because that's what happened to me with the brother, they stopped making drivers for it. So when I had my current computer, iMac, which they don't make anymore, this version, I had to go and use Silver Fast.
Silver Fast, right? Silverfish or whatever that thing's called.
Right. So that's the software I use now for the driver on that scanner, because now this one hopefully will work on this. This one I know will at least work until this computer don't work anymore. Mm-hmm. That's all the kind of stuff that you like, oh, I got a new computer, I got it home. Shit, it's not talking to it's not doing the Wi-Fi, it's not doing the Bluetooth. Oh, yeah, I have, this software, and it came out in 2019, and the new operating system goes, yeah, we don't use that. We're not making a driver for that anymore.
There's another secret place. Like I remember Silverfish or whatever that thing you just said is called, but also ViewScan.
I'm sorry, ViewScan. That's
ViewScan. It's kind of like it's like a pill for whatever ails you. If your thing isn't working, pause. If your scanner's not working anymore because you updated your OS, try and get ViewScan. That'll run anything.
Yeah, that's what that was right. The Silver Fast is what I had on my old G5, because the same thing happened. They stopped making drivers for that version of the Epson or whatever it was, the old scanner flatbed that I had. So, see, these are the kind of things that you find out usually when your computer shits the bed, and then you're like, oh, I got to go on Amazon or whatever. I got to find this thing.
On Friday afternoon, right?
Right. Oh, by the way, when you get it, like, oh yeah, well, your dongle doesn't meet the dingle, and the scanner doesn't work with that software, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah, and somebody made a comment. They were talking about your Preston Blair animation book that's been hanging out of your cubby over there
Oh yeah.
for years. And I said, we're creatures of habit. We don't like to mess with stuff. If it works, you rock with it. Like
That is the newer version, which has additional.
That's the longer one, not the big one.
Right. The bigger ones, which were Walter T. Foster, I had those as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
They have reprinted all those in that, but he also did additional material that's in that version, which is one of the few books that I do recommend for every art student, cartoonist who wants to learn how to cartoon. It's still a very, very, very good book.
I love it. All right, we got one more question to get in, then we're out of here. I gotta walk the dog.
Like Vladimir?
We're out of here like Vladimir. Well, we'll do this. There's a business one, but let's make it fun on the way out. Notorious GRD says, do you think Robert Downey Jr. returning to the Marvel films as Doom is more or less positive than the return of the Russo brothers? Steve Conley, do you have an answer?
No, I don't. I like the movies. I'm an easy mark for all of those. I mean, I can't get through Eternals, but I like pretty much everything they've put out. So it feels like it's weird to feel like they're going to have a return to glory for something that doesn't feel that old to me.
Right. Yeah, that's just
it's like a little too soon for a reunion episode of these things that just still seem to feel so fresh.
Yeah. Mike, what do you think? Keep it there.
I really liked him as Iron Man, and I liked those first. I didn't even really like the last Avengers. I did not like most of the Thor films. I'm trying to think the last Marvel movie that I really liked, and I am really having a hard time. The Spider-Man one was okay, but I think that they're kind of cooked at this point because I know what they're trying to do. By bringing Robert Downey back, they realize that they have all, except for the Fantastic Four, they've already used the best characters, right? Because Captain America and Iron Man and the Hulk and Spider-Man were always the best, most popular characters. And the other characters that they have, all the 15,000, they're just not as good. They weren't as popular in comics, right? Like Black Panther in comics was never as popular as Captain America, right? They don't have as good, their villains are not as good. So because they killed Thanos, they got to have Darth Vader, right? They got to have another Darth Vader. So it makes sense in one way to bring him in. See, we're going to be good like we used to be, right? But I don't know if you can go home again. And I think that, it's just me, if they had made him Dr. Doom, but hadn't said that he was Dr. Doom, and then it was revealed in the film, oh shit, he's Dr. Doom, and it came from supposedly some storyline, that would be probably more exciting. If you tell the fans, all right, Dr. Doom's coming in 2025. Question mark. People would be going crazy trying to figure out which celebrity is going to be Dr. Doom. That's just me. I think that they're going to continue to be on the decline because of the culture of the company and the fact that they're arrogant on one hand and don't understand the fans on the other hand. And there has actually now been a generational shift. A whole generation of kids who started watching this stuff 14 years ago at 10 are now 30. And maybe the generations that are coming along now, there's so much entertainment. Maybe they're not going to really care. They're going to be into whatever other thing that they're into, because things do go up and down. It's like
they're all on Webtoon.
Yeah, and I think it's not special. It was special, and I think it's going to be really hard for them to make it special.
Well, I think with them even putting this news out here, and I think this goes to a bigger problem, besides it being 10 o'clock. The bigger issue is that the modern fan has no patience.
No.
It's zero patience. And that's maybe a generational thing on the other side, because as Gen Xers, we grew up being patient. You had to wait for stuff. And, the culture of binge watching shows has eroded that. Also, having to do a pre-spoiler for a movie that's coming out in 2 years is indicative of what I'm talking about.
Right, and who's going to remember that? Oh, yeah, remember that thing that happened at Comic-Con 2 years ago? Blah, bitty, blah, blah, Who knows whether it's going to be,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they're not making them for me.
Right.
So they're making them for some mythical young, 10 to 35-year-old, whatever that,
window.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I saw some statistic in there because they know who their audience is, right? Who buys the toys, right? So you got guys our age who'll spend $400 to buy Hot Toy version of Black Widow. But then you got the kids that buy the Lego, right? If the Lego toys don't sell, it's all shit. They don't care because that's where they make their money. That's where they make is really where they made their money. That's what's killing Star Wars is the kids. You got guys your generation are buying those special Mattel Kickstarter Star Wars things.
The G.I. Joe stuff. Yeah.
Right. But the kids coming along now don't care about Star Wars like we did. Because it's just not special. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And all these companies care about is the bottom line of the marketing making them zillions of dollars. So I don't think that they necessarily even understand their own fan base, because the fan base, well, which fan base is it? 10-year-old? Is it a 35-year-old that likes Captain America? Is it the 62-year-old that likes Captain America? What I like about Captain America is maybe different than what a 10-year-old likes.
Buccaneer boots.
Right.
My cap is Buccaneer boots.
Right. My favorite Marvel film is still the first two Captain Americas.
Winter Soldier is Chef's Kiss. That's all I got to say.
You can watch the first Captain America is like the first Star Wars. If they never made another Star Wars, but you just watched the first one, great, beginning, middle, end, right?
Done deal.
It stands on its own. The other films now have to have you weave all in, and I don't know whether people's attention spans, like you said, are now. It's like I watched the first season of Batman Caped Crusader, which was pretty good, but it's not like when you watched the first season of Batman and you had to wait 15, 16 weeks to see all the,
that's how I watch it. I watch an episode at a time. I'm not gonna.
You're not gonna watch it sit there and eat your popcorn.
No. I don't want these things to be over. I want to enjoy them, so I'm enjoying them. I watch them. I focus. I don't have my tablet or my devices with me. I just watch the thing and enjoy it. And
you're not second screening. Come on.
The patience of a Gen Xer. I'm gonna eat my baked potato and watch this program.
I cut my baked potato, a perfect cube. Like OCD, cut my baked potato into quadrants.
In the 16th, yeah.
You know,
All right, that's enough, guys.
We've done it.
We've done it. We did it. We did it. Thank you guys so much.
Enough of your questions.
Yeah, enough. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you to my co-host. Maybe we should do more of these. I said in the chat earlier, it felt like I was pulling teeth a little bit at the beginning there, and then everybody kind of came alive. So I'm really excited.
Fun.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
see, that's what I said. I thought that's what would happen.
Well,
You did.
And
You did say
it's like NPR. You get to ask Terry
And
Gross.
thanks to Pulpate for the
springboard.
For launching us.
Yeah. And so just some updates. So Robert Alvarez did not appear this week. We will have him back in the near future. I would love to have him in maybe at the beginning of the fall, which isn't too long from now. And just in
almost Halloween.
Oh, that's right, because your neighborhood Cineplex will now be a Spirit of Halloween store.
That's right. Yeah.
Nobody goes to the movies anymore.
It's pumpkin everything now. Everything's pumpkin.
Everyone has their Leon Tober decorations up.
They've already got them out.
That's right. Let's get ready. So, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much. Let you know on the channel. That's right, the YouTube Pencil channel. Coffee Break with JN will return 9 p.m. EST. Same bad channel, but a different bad time. We'll see you
Pumpkin
tomorrow.
spice.
I'm going to drink a pumpkin spice coffee tomorrow night.
You're going to have your like Charlie Brown shirt on and your great pumpkin on the wall behind you.
So, all right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Dee Parson is a great syndicated cartoonist, so we should have on the show at some point. Dee says, how do you find people to bring on the show? Well, Dee, just not to speak out of turn, but, the 70 years of cartooning experience we all have collectively is just kind of like, hey, let's have so-and-so on. Okay, and we ask them, and that's kind of how it works.
And they avoid us, and then they don't come on.
So that's kind of it. I mean, there's no secret sauce to it. Sometimes people ask to be on it, and that's kind of like I have to talk to the guys. You know what I mean? And it doesn't. I don't want anything to be perfect.
Like the Octagon. They have to defeat each level.
Well, it's kind of like a thing. It's like I don't want to talk to your publicist or anything, but it's like it's not. This is an Oprah either. You know what I mean? And we're not booking guests because they got a new tell-all book. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, let's talk to Kyle Baker. And he said yes. You know what I'm saying? So
and they have to like to talk, because I've actually asked some people who have declined because they're camera shy.
There's a lot of that.
And they don't feel really comfortable being on camera and talking about their process. Some people are really great artists, but they're not great at explaining what they do, talking about their. So I also think we try to pick creators who are not only, very good or accomplished, but also can communicate. The worst thing to do is to have somebody on,
That's great. That's where you got Jerry Crow got jumped in.
So yeah, I've had people that I've asked since I was doing the magazine, so that's over 20 years, who say, when I do my next project, ask me again. So there are people I've asked for 20 years, and then they'll say, well, not now.
When they have their Kickstarter going, or when they're running their new project. Yeah, something to promote.
Right, and you see this giant team that we have running back here that I'm following somebody's calendar to see if I can get them back on. There's a big iceberg here, but I hope that you enjoy who we do bring on, and I also hope that you found somebody maybe you didn't know about, and now that you're a big fan of them. So we try to bring you value. So thank you. That's it. It's overtime. Let's get out of here. We had a great show. This happens every Wednesday if we can make it. 8 p.m. EST. Tell your friends. Tell your moms and them. Pencil to pencil where it's at.
Moms love the show.
Guys, I feel like we're at the end of the reel, like on a cassette, like right where the tape starts getting tight, right there. So we're going to use our virtual pencils to rewind this tape to bring reality back into focus. And this won't work unless we wash our turkey hands. So let's do that right now. Guys, thank you so much. We do this without a net every week. We'll see you tomorrow for coffee break. Don't eat the fish.